going to keep things going along here in the Livestream Lounge with our next guest. He's pointing at me, and he's about to come on stage. It's Jack Belsito. How are you?
How are you, Marty? Good to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah, I know we talked a couple times on the phone, and
yes.
now live in the flesh.
Yes.
So just to clarify, Jack Belsito is the managing director at First Beverage Ventures. This is a sort of brand new position for you.
6 days.
6 days. And you're still there. You still love it.
So far, so good. So
Great. Well, just wanted to get your thoughts on what you've seen so far at BevNet Live. I know there's a lot of brands here and a lot of sort of discussions going on, different trends and categories. Anything that's caught your ear or caught your eye?
Yeah, well, I was here when the stuff was leaking and all that, so way back in 2009. So I can't believe how this has developed over time. You guys have done a great job. The buzz in the room is incredible. The morning was terrific. I thought Stonyfield was great. I mean, Gary was just terrific, and I could listen to Michael Kerbin forever, and tell his story. And the women of private equity, that was really terrific. And then the shootout, which is just great drama.
It's always fun.
Always fun. And I was generally in agreement with the judges. I think they did a good job.
Okay.
And I think you think about the opportunity that those young, not all young, but those brand owners have to have that type of feedback from that type of panel is, it's amazing. So it's a great thing.
That's what we aim for sure.
That's great.
So let's talk a little bit about your new 6-day-old job, managing director at First Beverage Ventures. I'm sure a lot of our listeners are familiar with the company, but sort of what is your role going to be there? What do you what's going to be your function in that company?
Yeah, well, they're an incredibly successful company. So I'm joining Bill Anderson, who many people in the industry know. He's built a great team there, very, very talented, small, very powerful. So I'm joining that, an already very successful venture. They've been terrific in identifying early stage beverage companies and helping them grow. I think, my role there will be to help identify those companies even more as it gets more competitive in the private equity field, and to help differentiate First Beverage. Having been in companies that scale and get large, I think I can offer not a unique but a good view for young or early stage brand owners. And then once they become a portfolio company with First Beverage, just to help them realize their dream. I thought that the private equity discussion talked a lot about that connection to, hey, this is something that we're living and breathing every day, and there's nothing more exciting than to be able to help someone do that. And so that's the part I'm really, really looking forward to.
And, it's so interesting, that sort of evaluation process, because to me, I always wonder about sort of where do you look on the curve, because you obviously want to get in on early stage and emerging brands who are doing something that is exciting. At the same time, it has to you have to be compelled that there's a market for it, that it can be somewhat, scalable. So sort of where do you sort of look for, how do you sort of identify those brands, and what are some of the things you use to evaluate what's going to work for you?
Yeah, well, I think people come at it from similar place. Everybody's looking at broad trends, health and wellness, so you want to obviously stay inside of that sort of arena that's driving other types of trends around plants and natural energy and things that are falling underneath that umbrella. So we're all sort of looking at those spaces, knowing that's where consumers are going, that's where young consumers and old consumers are going, as people learn more about their bodies and what they ingest. All consumers are moving that way. So we're all sort of looking at those things. So I think the things that it comes down to are the things that you talked about. Are there voids in this arena in the field? Is there something new here that's different that can be scaled and get to a large play and be interesting to strategic companies or other companies or maybe just the public in some cases. I think a lot of that comes down to, the category. A lot of that comes down to the team. Obviously, the proposition needs to be there, but often it's the founder or the team, and you're betting as much on those players as you are as anybody else. And, that gets hard, but that gets into the whole human element of it. And, you get some right, you get some wrong. You hope you get more right than wrong. And I know in the case of First Beverage, they've had a great track record already. So I'm hoping to help that.
And any specific categories that sort of fit what you were talking about, those identifiers of a brand or a category that could really have some scale in front of it?
Well, I think everybody's looking at natural energy. I think that will continue to be something that grows. Everything plant-based, those are all coming out of the health and wellness areas, and that's across multiple categories, whether it be non-dairy or just in regular based plant-based teas. I think teas are an interesting place. Probably, I'm very involved in tea for a long time, but I think there's a whole segment untouched in tea that is still there. So I think that's a real opportunity. There's some things that haven't been done yet that are interesting to me. Like no one's done anything with chocolate, all this stuff with coffee. So I think that's a kind of an open space for some companies that we haven't seen much on. And then I think what's really interesting is the innovation and developments outside just the brands, and that's, you had people talking about it here today. Gary Hirschberg talked about it, that there are, multiple ways to communicate with your consumers that were not there years ago. You have a different avenue to communicate. You have more routes to market if you're in NA than you ever had. You can go direct to consumer. You have Amazon. All these things are part of that disruption, which are really, really interesting. And those trends are as important as the category trends, I think.
So if you're a young entrepreneur in this space, you have to sort of pay attention to those other sort of communication tools, and it seems like you really got to take advantage of that if you want to be competitive in the space.
I think the young entrepreneurs are innovating in the space. They're teaching everybody, how to talk and how to establish a bond with consumers that's a little different than maybe, we were doing 30 years ago when we were going through public mediums and broadcast mediums.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get your thoughts on, obviously, longtime CEO at Voss. So I want to sort of get your thoughts a little bit about the premium water market. I mean, that's something that it just seems to be on a really impressive trajectory. But is that sustainable? Do you see that sort of that growth is going to continue on in the coming years?
Absolutely, and I think it'll continue to grow. The category of water in general is healthy. It's taking on value. It's growing. It's huge. It's the number one water consumption of anything around the world. It's the only thing you need. Everything else here is discretionary. It's the only thing we need.
Excellent point.
Right? So it's the ultimate function, category. So as long as that continues to be healthy, continues to take on value, which it has for a long, long time now, the premium and super premium elements of that will be very healthy. And the money from soft drinks has to go somewhere, and it's pouring into water. We're going to see a lot more derivatives of water. People calling things that aren't water, and I think you'll see a lot. And it's really just the tip of the iceberg. Yep. No pun intended.
Very well. Well, and just we have about 30 seconds left, I think. But just if you can give any piece of advice for a brand that is going to be pitching to investors, sort of putting themselves out there, as many of the brands are here at BevNet Live, what's the most important thing that they need to make sure that they're on top of?
It's a good question. I think they need to be. They need the first thing I would look for is they living their brand. Are they part of that brand? If I look at that individual, do I see their brand there, and do I see them sort of all in on that? And I think that's the number one thing. There's nobody here who's been successful who wasn't all in, and I mean all in capital letters. And so that's the number one thing I'd be looking for.
Yeah. Long nights and endless hours.
It's not all glory.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, thank you so much, Jack. It's fantastic.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you for joining us on the lounge.